Return of the Dolgans. This year the pickings had been rich, and the tribe moved slowly, burdened with wagons, and a long line of chained captives. Gherkin drew aside from the column and watched as the horde moved steadily past him. The Dolgan riders were weighed down with booty, and their horses plodded onwards under the strain of saddlebags that bulged visibly with gold. Gherkin recalled how fiercely the Kislevites had fought. So many Dolgans had fallen to missile fire from their cursed armoured war wagons, bristling with small cannon and packed with warriors. He smiled inwardly, remembering how they had been destroyed with fire. Now, hundreds of Kislevite captives marched slowly past, backs bent under the weight of chains and scarred by the whips of the slave drivers. Men, women, and children alike. For many days, Gherkin led the tribe eastward at a pace that was as ponderous for the horsemen as it was grueling for the captives, until at last the highlands of Zorn Urzkel began to give way to the hill country beyond. Yet, even this was a barren land of rock and sparse, dry grass, with little nourishment even for the tough little Kurgan ponies. The Dolgans had travelled these paths many times before, and knew where to find water, and where to hunt the scrawny wild goats that would sustain them until they reached the low country. Many prisoners stumbled on the march, and their corpses were dragged along by the unrelenting pace of the column before a rider leapt from his horse to cut the mangled body free of its chains. Amongst the Dolgans, too, there were deaths, as warriors succumbed to wounds suffered at the hands of their foes, or each other, for the Dolgans were proud warriors, quick to take offence, and faster still to take arms to settle their differences. After many weeks, the tribe reached the head of a broad valley that Gherkin knew well, a valley from the sides of which ran innumerable small streams that converged into a single, fast-flowing water, stretching eastward and becoming a broad, dark river. From the valley top, the distant river could be seen twisting in the sun, and for many leagues beside its banks, the land shone with succulent green grass. This was the pasture of the Dolgans, a land of respite that would replenish the tribe's stores and fatten their horses, before it was time to move on to winter grounds further south. Before they reached those pastures, though, there was a sacred duty to perform. Gherkin sensed the growing excitement amongst his people as the moon grew dark and the appointed time grew ever closer. If the prisoners guessed anything of what lay ahead, they did not show it, but huddled in their chains and filth, mute and vacant like cattle. As they rode eastward, the Dolgans' destination slowly rose from the plain below, a huge, conical hill that lay in a bend of the river. It was a hill of perfect regularity that spoke of human artifice rather than the work of nature. Surrounding this great mound were many lesser mounds, much smaller and round-topped, filling all the land encompassed by the curve of the river, a curve so long as to almost form a circle, before turning at the last moment to resume its eastward course. On the dawn of the second day after leaving the river, Gherkin saw dark smoke above the mound, a dark streak that rose vertically into the air before dispersing into an even, grey sky. At the sight of this, the warriors cheered and hailed their gods with great shout, so that the prisoners cowered in their uncertain terror. Gherkin smiled in his grim and scrutable fashion, only too aware of the dangers and rewards that the coming ceremony would bring. For this was the culmination of the Dolgans' year, where a long night of reckoning would be made between tribe and gods. Sacrifices would be hurled upon the pyre that burned atop the great mound. Hundreds of souls would be offered, drawing the gods to earth to witness the deeds of the Dolgans, and to make their judgment. In the flames the great god would come, and young warriors would be chosen, and marked for greatness with iron brands heated in the fire of sacrifice. Old warriors would receive their rewards too, those who drank blood from skulls bound with gold, and whose souls already walked at the heels of the gods in the brutal warrior paradise of chaos. Most important of all would come the affirmation of the chieftain, where Gurkhan would face any who dared contest the leadership of the Dolgans under the watchful eye of the gods. Reward or damnation was a game which Gurkhan had played out nearly 20 times already. Yet, in his old age, he was as strong and unbowed as ever. The drumbeat ceased abruptly, so that the crackle of fire and snap of splintering stones seemed suddenly and unexpectedly to fill in the silence. All eyes were upon Gurkhan, for none dared to look upon the shifting, glittering shapes that rose and shimmered in the flames.
"I, Gurkhan, name the Dolgans as my people, and in the name of Tzeentch, changer of ways,"
he cried, drawing himself to his full height, towering over the tallest warrior by 2 yards, for over the years the gods had been kind to him after their fashion. His eyes, which were as numerous and bright as stars, swiveled upon their myriad stalks, but saw little sign of a challenger. He raised his arms, long and multiply segmented into the air, claws clicking and long whiskery tendrils twitching as he spoke. And suddenly the flames blazed with a fierce and unholy joy, and a shape formed from pure fire, a shape reminiscent of Gurkhan himself in some strange, inhuman way. Words formed in the flames, and at that sound the Dolgans cried in pain and covered their ears, for the judgment of Tzeentch was ever agony to the ears of mortals.
"Child of chaos, who art ever beloved by the fire, thy time upon this earth is done."
At these words, Gurkhan approached the flames, his segmented body glowing red before the gaping fire, his legs clawing uncertainly as if compelled by a will that was not his own. With a scream and a sudden hiss of vapour he was gone, consumed by his god, whose image among the flames grew, if anything, to resemble the fallen leader even more closely. A strong, salty smell drifted over the dumbfounded Dolgans. The flames spoke out once more.
"Gurkhan is with us now, and sustains us. Now is the time for the trial by combat. For Tzeentch decrees there will be a new chieftain amongst the Dolgans, and he will be great in the eyes of chaos, and the West will tremble before his name. It is written in the flames."